Do you struggle to find time to improve your teaching in your already busy schedule?
We're going to give you 7 ways to fit customized professional development into your schedule in this episode of the DIESOL podcast. Welcome to DIESOL, the show that focuses on developing innovation in English as a second or other language. I'm Brent Warner, community college professor of ESL and primary edtech blogger for TESOL International. And I'm here with Ixchell Reyes, award-winning educator in innovation and professional development and specializing in teacher training with an edtech focus. Ixchell, how are you?
Hey, I'm really happy that we're doing this topic because I'm often trying to fit PD into my schedule. And um,
Yeah, I think it gets hard for a lot of us, right? We're looking at these times and we're like, I don't have time, or I got to go, I have too many errands to do, or whatever else it is. And so, I think we really wanted to focus in on this idea because it's we see lots of opportunities, but we don't necessarily always take advantage of them in the right ways. And so today we wanted to really kind of hone in on the idea of how do we fix that little problem of it's like there's stuff out there, I know it, right? And that's not necessarily the problem, but how do I take advantage of it in a way that's most productive? And so so we came up with a bunch of different ways, and we're gonna jump right in. So Ishal, are you ready to go?
I'm ready to go.
All right. Let's start with podcasts. I mean, since we're here, everybody listening to the show is already a podcast listener at some level, one level or another. So how do you listen to your podcast, Michelle?
I typically go to Apple. So I
Mm-hmm.
use the Apple native podcast app, and I know that I recently sort of moved it over to Spotify just to see the diversity of shows because I
Mm-hmm.
think there's a lot of stuff that I've discovered on Spotify that I haven't seen on Apple.
Yeah, the way that they display them is a little bit different. So here's the thing. Let's get started with Apple first. And this could be for multiple different podcast players, but what happens is when we start subscribing to shows, you might have a bunch of different shows inside of your list, and then if you're just looking at the regular Apple or whichever podcast player your list, a lot of times it'll just be like, here are the latest episodes you've downloaded from your entire list of podcasts, right? And
Mhm.
so, depending, some of these might be daily shows and they start pushing other shows to the bottom. And then you kind of only scroll through the first five or maybe 10 before you're like, I don't know what else is down there. So, you end up missing a lot of the shows that you might have downloaded. And so what you can do is you can make lists just like you can in a lot of your social medias and things like that, is like lists that are specified on the ones that you're looking for. So in Apple, you can actually go to a section in the settings called new station, and you can make a station. So for example, you might make one called ELT, right? And then you could go in and put in um you could put in Diesel, right? And you could go put in Carol Salva's boosting achievement and whatever else you listen to.
Cast, of course.
Yeah. And so whatever you're going to put inside of there, and then when you go to that list, then it only brings up the ELT ones that you want instead of seeing all the podcasts that might be, like Ishel, I know you listen to the true crime or to whatever else.
That's one of the reasons. I actually just discovered this today while you were typing up our show notes that I could now separate my true crime podcast from my EDU podcast, and that's something that was annoying before because I would have to skip this episode or skip that episode or
Hmm.
and I don't always have time to do that. So by organizing them, it's just a little bit easier to get your PD.
Yeah, yeah. The next one doesn't always come in that great, or like it doesn't necessarily play the right one that you want in the next one.
Yep.
So
And then it's like, oh man, I don't want to hear that right now.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So Spotify, well, just point out that Spotify, we went in and looked into it, and Spotify actually doesn't offer this option, right? You can subscribe or you can say, hey, I want to listen to a particular show, or you can go and highlight an episode and it'll play it in a list for you. But you can't do it like this where you say, I want these shows to be put into a special list. And so just be careful that Spotify is not really well designed, and there are some requests out there online for them to update it and make it more accessible, but it doesn't really do it very well. If you're on an Android, or if you're on some, some other system, there are other podcatchers that do these types of things. Most of them do. So Pocket Cast or Overcast, or the one that I'm actually using these days is called Snipped, SNIPD. And so you can customize these lists, for all sorts of different things. But check and see. It's actually worth having a podcatcher that can customize your lists, because I think what ends up happening is we get so distracted by whatever's at the top, or you're like, I really want to listen to this thing, and then it's kind of like, oh, but hold on a second, I'm gonna go have to make some time for it later because I got pulled away by the first thing that it shows. So lists are really great in helping you focus in on building your PD time.
So the next way to um, add some PD is to take free courses from places like edX. I know that we're used to like Udemy and Khan Academy and all those other things, but edX is one where you can audit free courses from universities like Cornell and Pepperdine,
Mm,
and of course others. But I went in there and I typed in TESOL to see what kind of courses were available, and all of them you could either audit for free at your own pace, or enroll, with a cohort.
mm.
You could, I guess if you really like the course, you could pay for this, like there's a certificate version. So, given that the course is free, there's not a lot of pressure, especially if you have to make time for other things, and you can continue your PD and finish. Also, there's LinkedIn Learning. I recently moved over to LinkedIn because I just, again, I needed a place to find like-minded educators who are sharing what they're doing in the classroom and offering their thoughts. So I'm not super well versed on it yet. So Brent, you might be able to speak a little bit more on how LinkedIn Learning has helped you.
Yeah, LinkedIn Learning is great. You don't really have to be involved in the social media side of LinkedIn to use LinkedIn Learning. I mean, it's just private courses that you go through. Again, same kind of thing. You go through it at your own pace. They're all taken, they used to be called Linda, and it kind of got bought by LinkedIn Learning.
Oh, I
Uh,
remember Linda.
yeah, yeah. So that's what
I
it
got
is.
to get through Linda. Okay.
Yeah, so they're really well designed. They're just,
Yeah.
they're pretty straightforward, and a lot of them are great because they're like less than an hour long course, and so you can just kind of, oh, I just want a little refresher on this thing or whatever it is. So again, you can just kind of build it again on your own time. Hey, I'm not going to watch this TV show for an hour. I'm going to do this course instead. You'd be in a good place. But yeah, lots to explore. There's things that are out there, and they were popular for a while, and then they kind of faded. Like these types of free courses, they kind of faded from popularity, but they're still really valuable. So it's again just kind of a thing to say, hey, I'm going to jump back into it. Next up is deeper dives in social media groups. So kind of similar to the podcast thing where you make your own channel. I think the problem with things like Facebook or LinkedIn is we join these groups, but we wait for them to show up on our feed, and then hopefully something that's coming from there is showing up in our feed as interesting, right? And so when you go directly into the groups intentionally, so maybe if it's just once a week or whatever it is, but intentionally make your way into the group and then look at it, you're going to find a lot more value out of it than you are if you just kind of wait for it to show up, right? And so, or hope that it shows up on your wall or your feed. And so this is also true if you're even in Reddit too. It's like you can have the Reddit subgroups that you want to follow, that could be like the ESL or the teaching ones or whatever. But here's my tip for this is if you save the link to a bookmark on your browser instead of trying to log in, so whatever it is, if it's Facebook or LinkedIn, and then you're like, okay, wait, let me go find my groups that I'm in. Instead, just make a link directly in your bookmarks bar, and intentionally go into it from your bookmarks bar, then you're going to skip past all the stuff that's going to try and pull your attention again and focus in only on what's in the one group. And then hopefully, if there's good stuff being shared in there, then you're going to be able to spend a little bit more time, even though it might not have floated to the surface for you on your wall. So deeper dives in social media, great way to make sure that your customized content is showing up for you.
Okay. The next idea that I thought of was the good old book club. And I know that maybe you and I have been parts of just book clubs because we wanted to read something, but
Mm-hmm.
how many, I was just telling you pre-show how many books I purchased because I wanted to read more and get some professional development, but I just didn't finish the book because,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it's more work. But it's just so much easier to read with a colleague or someone online, someone looking to read the same thing. So you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to wait until someone offers one. You could just create one.
I
I
love
guess,
that.
yeah, you could take the table of contents from the book, and then you could have AI generate some guiding questions for each week or for each topic of every chapter. You can also ask the people that you're doing the book club with to do make a Google Doc and add the questions in. But something that's not too, I guess this is more like leisurely PD, but you
Mm-hmm.
still have a goal to finish the book because we know that it's a commitment when you're trying to get that extra PD and you want to finish it, right? You want to set yourself up for success.
Yeah.
So I think doing it with like an accountability buddy at the gym, right? And it's a way to get your PD in, and you're reading a book that you've always wanted to read, and then you have someone to chat about it with.
I love
Uh,
it. I love it. I mean, this to me, it makes tons of sense because really, like, the in a lot of these PD books that we read, it's like a chapter is really accessible, right? It's like, hey, I can just read one chapter, it doesn't take me that long. And then you don't feel as pressured to get through the whole book, but you're like, oh, we're just going to be talking about this one chapter, and so I'm going to get through this section. And I really, really like that idea. I think it's a great way to kind of help people help people get connected to it, right? Because like you're saying, Michelle, you buy the book and you're like, I'm just not going to do that part. But if you have friends or if you have and again, colleagues too, right? You could do this with your colleagues and it's just a short, maybe a 30-minute thing where you're just getting together and talking about those things. I think there's a lot of cool ways to play with it.
And the point is not to have this literary discussion about the style,
Hmm.
or it's really to have a conversation with your colleagues where you can come up with ideas and talk about what you've gained from the book and how you might apply it. And I think that in itself is so important. You and I were trying to figure out what happened to ed camps to see if we could add them to the show, but they've now sort of disappeared.
Hmm.
And so that's a place where people could share their ideas with just other people. And so a book club is just another way to have conversations with colleagues because it's something that you could do over lunch,
Yeah,
right?
I like the informal sense of it. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely. Over lunch, it doesn't have to be set up as a long thing. It's just like, hey, just log in and talk to us about it. Even if you didn't finish the reading, come
Yeah,
and you
for
might still get some
comments.
ideas, right?
Right. And then a good place to start is I used Goodreads to see, I typed in TESOL to see what books it would give me. And it gave me a pretty good list.
Mm,
So again, there's probably some oldies but goodies, and then there might be some teaching methodology type books, but it gives you something to sort in case you're looking for the latest book. And then you offered an app called Bookshelf, which sounds like it's for more serious book clubbers.
hmm. Yeah, Bookshelf is cool. So if for people who are reading, it's a reading tracker like Goodreads, but a lot
Mm,
of people struggle with Goodreads because the interface is not
monkey.
great. Yeah. And so basically it was made in direct response to like, I want Goodreads to be good. And so they made it there. And so if you just want to be a little bit more serious, it costs some money or whatever, but Bookshelf is an interesting option for heavy duty readers too. All right, hello everybody. So, if you are listening in early in February, I am running a workshop for TESOL International. So, the workshop is called AI in the English Language Classroom, and it's a 5 day workshop from February 19th to the 23rd. It'll be from 3 o'clock to 4:30 Pacific or 6 o'clock to 7:30 Eastern for those 5 days. And so what I'm covering over those days is we're doing an overview of AI and understanding on the first day. Then we're talking about challenges and limitations of AI. Next, we're talking about AI for classroom management and engagement. On Thursday, we'll be talking about AI for language skills development. And on Friday, we're talking about AI for assessment and feedback. So this is meant to be fun. It's meant to be casual. Ishal, I don't know if you're going to be able to join. I think you're busy with other things, which is so sad. But um, but that's okay. People are signing up for this. It looks like it's going to be a great time. If you are a member of TESOL or if you're considering joining, please do. We'd love to have you in. The website is www.tesol.org/AI-workshop, or you can go check the show notes of the episode, or you can go over to tesol.org and just go find it. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. This is something a little bit different that I haven't done before. In this setting, I've done lots of one-on-one workshops or, like for a school or something, but I've never done a full course like this. And so I think there's a lot of really interesting things to happen here. And especially the big thing that I really want to help people with is give you the time to play with it. Because I think so many people hear about AI and then they just haven't really done very much. And so this is a real opportunity for people to get into it.
All right, so continuing with our ideas. The good old message board for your local TESOL affiliate. Oftentimes this is hit or miss, but it's worth checking. There are many affiliates that are active.
Hmm.
You don't necessarily have to be there in person. They offer a lot of, since the pandemic, they offer a lot of stuff online. If your local group isn't very active, try moving up into bigger organizations like TESOL International. TESOL International does offer a lot of stuff, and there's a lot of content out there for bite-sized type professional development that is available, even if you're not a member.
Yeah, well, and those message boards are great. Like when you get in there, like you start seeing stuff that's local. So, for example, the Catisel one still pretty active, and they're talking about a lot of state level things going on. So, if that's important to you, you might want to jump into those. Definitely think those message boards are. I think they might be coming back, right? As people kind of are like social media, not so much. I want to make sure I'm talking to real people and not just reading AI generated whatever, right? I want to talk to people who are focusing on this thing. So message boards might be making a comeback for that as well. Next up is specifically webinars, right? Now, I think, Ishel, I don't know, did you feel this during the pandemic and afterwards the Zoom fatigue?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, and I know we all did. And so then it's like, well, I don't want to sit down and watch another webinar. And I think a lot of them are kind of like, there's still that hesitation around it or wanting to push back against it. But you can switch these things out, right? You can carry a Zoom webinar in your pocket and you can go for a walk with your dog. So, like, what if you're like, okay, there's a webinar going on at this time. I'm just going to listen in. I'll keep it in my pocket. So if I'm walking my dog, for example, I can pull it out and I can go look at the screen and see what's going on. But then I can just keep walking for the talking parts and all those things as well. So I would just suggest that there are webinars out there, just the ones that you might be interested, put them in your calendar and put them in as a different color so you don't feel committed to it, right? So maybe your work stuff is always in, red
Right.
or whatever it shows up, and then but like if you make a optional webinars that you're maybe thinking about going to in blue or green or whatever else it is, then you don't feel as committed. You're just like, oh yeah, that's a thing that is happening. And then choose for yourself, right? Like what's a reasonable amount of times to go to these things for you? Is it once a month, right? I just want to say, hey, I'm going to do these things once a month. That's it, right? And it's fine. Is it more than that? Is it less than that? I don't know. I'm just saying that if you start making a plan for attending these things on on a fairly regular, semi-regular basis, then you're going to be more likely to go to them and then go, okay, actually, that was worth my time. Which is actually what's happened to me, Shell, a lot recently. Is I'm
Mhm.
like, I don't really want to go to this PD thing, but I guess I'll go to it. And then I show up to it, I'm like, oh, dang, I learned a couple of good things inside
Yeah,
of there. So,
you mentioned, I don't have a dog,
mhm.
and my pet of choice is a cat, and I can't really walk a cat.
Yeah.
But and I'm not advocating for watching a webinar while you're driving, but I actually do listen to webinars while I'm driving because
Oh yeah.
that's a time when I'm just letting someone tell me ideas that I might put into that I might apply in the classroom. And there's been many times where, again, one of the drawbacks of living close to work is that I no longer have 2 hours of commute time to listen to several webinars. But then I come home, get it, I'm in the garage and I'm like, oh, I don't want to turn it off. I'm just gonna listen another 10 minutes.
Hmm.
And again, any PD that you get, if it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes, that's more than zero. And so I'm advocating for, again, we have busy schedules and I don't have an extra hour at home to go listen to stuff or work when I've worked 8 hours. So anything additional, 10 minutes, even 10 minutes is better than zero.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Last one on here is getting on mailing lists. What
And
do we
I was
got
kind
there?
of like, getting on mailing lists. Well, most of us don't want to be on more mailing lists and we, actively unsubscribe. But it's worth remembering that most people from small podcasts or websites are just one person trying to share and build a community. They're very unlikely to spam you, but they will remind you when something pops up,
Hmm.
which is true, especially in the education community. That's how I learn about certain things from certain people.
Yeah.
For example, Dr. JPB Gerald or Justin, who's our friend, that's how I find out about his workshops. He
Yeah.
never comes.
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. So I think that's a good point is like, we have this image of mailing lists as being like, oh my gosh, another terrible thing, or it's like I got to go unsubscribe from corporations for sure, right? Go delete, go unsubscribe from all those
all of those
things.
fun things and
Yeah, I mean, my advice is go sign up for a teacher's mailing list and go unsubscribe from two shopping mailing lists, right? For everyone that you do, and then you'll be sorting it out. But also, if it's people like us, right? It's like most of the time they kind of forget, and then every once in a while they're like, oh yeah, here's something, and they're like, okay, well then you can kind of get caught up on things. So I don't loathe the mailing list, right? It still is a great way to actually just kind of catch up on the things that that you're interested in. All right, Michelle. So that's 7 different ways that people can make a little bit of time for PD in their already busy schedule. There's also a book out there too, the DIY PD, A Guide to Self-Directed Learning for Educators of Multilingual Learners by our friends Carol Salva, Katie Topple, and Tan Nguyen. And so we forgot I don't have it with me while I'm here in Japan, and I don't think you don't have it. You have it with you, or it might be packed away right now. But if you're interested in how to do things for yourself, that's a great book as well to go check out if you want to follow up more on this topic and be like, oh, I want to have a little bit more information. So DIY PD, worth a look.
all right, time for our fun finds. This week I have a podcast and it is called Last Week in AI.
Hmm,
It summarizes all of the changes, upcoming products, etc., and implications for this in all of AI. So it is a little bit technical at times, but it's fun to, as an instructor, as a teacher, to see where we might be going soon. So check it
wonderful.
out.
Nice. So mine is the new show, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. It's on Amazon Prime. It's got Donald Glover and Maya Erskine. It's kind of based on the movie, the husband and wife who are spies or whatever like that, but
Yeah.
it's got its own whole premise. It's very different feeling and not as silly, but it's a slow burn. So you have to kind of be into that feeling of like where they linger in the moment, or it's like it's just kind of like what's going on in here. So I love that type of setup. Mr. and Mrs.
How many
Smith.
episodes are you in?
I think I'm 4 episodes in, three
Okay.
or four
Enough.
episodes in. Yeah, it's been great for me. I really enjoy that type of show. So and it's got its moments of spy and shooting and explosions, and then it's got these other really long, slower moments that's about the relationship. And so uh worth a check, Mr. and Mrs. Smith.
Cool. For the show notes and other episodes, check out diesel.org/98. You can also find us on YouTube.
You can find me on the socials at Brent G. Warner.
And you can find me, Ixchell, at Ixy_Pixie. That's IXY_PIXY. In Bulgarian, thank you is Благодаря. Благодаря for tuning in to the Diesel podcast.
Thanks, everybody.
See you.